The most heinous crimes often originate from the smallest of provocations, a bruised ego or a perceived slight. In the case of Brielle Saunders, a brutal and horrific crime was perpetrated by individuals driven by a toxic mix of ego, entitlement, and a desire for control. The abandoned lot in Columbus, Georgia, bore witness to the unfolding of this tragedy, a crime that would leave an indelible mark on the victim and the community. The details of that fateful night are difficult to comprehend, and the testimonies of the victim are a testament to the unimaginable pain and suffering she endured. The perpetrators, fueled by their own fragile egos and a desire for domination, subjected Brielle to a prolonged and brutal assault. She was shot multiple times, passed from one assailant to another, and treated like a disposable object. Despite the unimaginable trauma she suffered, Brielle's story is one of resilience, determination, and courage. Forced into a trunk, she managed to escape, only to be shot again, this time 10 times. The perpetrators, in an attempt to conceal their crime and destroy her identity, doused her with fuel and set her on fire. However, Brielle's will to survive and her determination to seek justice drove her to crawl to safety, where she eventually found help. A warm welcome to True Crime Family Stories. We're thrilled to have you join us on this journey, and we want to take a moment to express our heartfelt gratitude to each and every one of our subscribers and viewers. In the vibrant city of Columbus, Georgia, a young star was born. Brielle Saunders, a talented and charismatic individual, was nurtured in an environment that fostered her creative growth. Her father, a skilled gospel musician, played a pivotal role in shaping her musical journey. He laid the foundation for her future success by teaching her the fundamentals of singing, which would eventually become the cornerstone of her artistic expression. As a child, Brielle was exposed to the rich sounds of gospel music, which instilled in her a deep appreciation for the power of lyrics and storytelling. Her father's guidance helped her develop a unique voice, one that would resonate with audiences and leave a lasting impression. The early exposure to music had a profound impact on Brielle, sparking a passion that would only continue to grow as she matured. As she navigated her formative years, Brielle's love for music evolved, and she began to explore the world of hip-hop. This genre, with its emphasis on lyrical dexterity and creative storytelling, resonated deeply with her. Her father's influence had prepared her for this moment, and she was now poised to make her mark on the music scene. With her natural talent, coupled with the lessons she learned from her father, Brielle was destined for greatness. She was a young woman with a clear vision, a strong voice, and an unrelenting passion for music, and she was ready to take the world by storm. Brielle Saunders' ambition went beyond just making a name for herself in the hip-hop scene. She was driven by a desire to challenge the status quo and create a lasting impact on the industry. She wanted to be a trailblazer, paving the way for other women to break into the male-dominated world of hip-hop. While she had already gained recognition in her neighborhood and was treated like a local celebrity, fame was not her primary motivator. Instead, she was fueled by a passion to empower and inspire other women to take their place in the hip-hop scene. Her fearless attitude and unapologetic lyrics resonated deeply with her audience, who admired her strength and conviction. She was a force to be reckoned with, and her voice echoed throughout the city, leaving a lasting impression on all who heard her. Brielle's confidence and skill were put to the test in rap battles, where she consistently emerged victorious, earning her a reputation as a formidable opponent. However, it was this very passion and dedication to her craft that ultimately led to her downfall. Her love for the game became an all-consuming force, driving her to take risks and push boundaries that would ultimately lead to devastating consequences. Despite her promising career and beautiful life, Brielle's obsession with hip-hop would eventually spiral out of control, transforming her dream into a nightmare. The very thing that had brought her so much joy and fulfillment would ultimately become her undoing, leaving her to face the darker side of the industry she loved. The individuals responsible for the horrific acts in question are Robert Johnson, Katuri Glover, and Joey Garin. Notably, Robert Johnson and Katuri Glover shared a close friendship, with Johnson exerting a significant influence over those around him. His physical presence was often used to intimidate and assert control, ensuring that others fell in line with his expectations. Johnson's past is marked by a history of delinquent behavior, with a notable incident occurring when he was just 13 years old. At that time, he was involved in a disturbing incident with an 8-year-old, which raised serious concerns about his behavior and judgment. When questioned about the incident, Johnson claimed that the younger child had followed him voluntarily, a response that has been widely disputed. As Johnson grew older, his issues with anger management and control only intensified. By the age of 25, he had developed a reputation for being prone to outbursts and exhibiting unhealthy dominance over those around him. People who knew him often referred to him as an angry mule, a testament to his volatile temperament and tendency to lash out at others. This behavior has been widely condemned, and it is essential to acknowledge the harm caused by such actions. In contrast to Robert Johnson's imposing presence, Katori Glover was a quiet and unassuming individual, but no less dangerous. He embodied the phrase "a wolf in sheep's clothing," as his outward demeanor belied a more sinister nature. If one were to judge him solely on his appearance, they would be caught off guard by his actions, which were often at odds with his reserved exterior. At 26 years old, Glover's association with Johnson was a recipe for disaster. His impulsive nature, which led him to act without fully thinking through the consequences, made him vulnerable to Johnson's manipulative influence. This toxic combination would ultimately prove to be his downfall. Glover's criminal record was also marked by a history of petty theft and assault, further solidifying his reputation as a volatile and unpredictable individual. Joey Garin, the youngest member of the group, was driven by a deep-seated need for validation and recognition. He craved the approval of his peers, particularly Johnson and Glover, and was willing to go to great lengths to achieve it. This desire for acceptance led him to engage in reckless and volatile behavior as he sought to prove himself to the others. Garen's eagerness to fit in and gain recognition made him susceptible to the group's dysfunctional dynamics, and he often found himself drawn into their erratic and destructive behavior. As a result, his own recklessness and impulsivity were amplified, leading to a toxic spiral of actions that would have far-reaching consequences. The trio, consisting of Johnson, Glover, and Garin, was driven by a desire to exert senseless control and dominance over others. Their precarious and volatile nature made them a formidable and feared group, as they reveled in the chaos and destruction they created. Johnson, the self-proclaimed leader, would issue instructions which Glover would promptly carry out without hesitation or question. Glover's impulsive nature made him a willing participant in the group's nefarious activities, as he acted on instinct without considering the consequences. Garin, on the other hand, was drawn into the group's dynamics by his insatiable need for attention and affirmation. He sought to prove himself as a valuable member of the trio, and in doing so he became an enthusiastic participant in their plans. His eagerness to please and be accepted by the others led him to escalate their schemes, adding fuel to the fire and perpetuating a cycle of violence and destruction. Together, the trio formed a toxic and destructive unit, with each member playing a unique role in the group's dynamics. Johnson provided the leadership and direction, Glover supplied the impulsiveness and aggression, and Garin offered the enthusiasm and eagerness to please. Their combined efforts created a perfect storm of chaos and destruction, as they left a trail of devastation in their wake. The trio's actions were a testament to the dangers of unchecked power and the devastating consequences of senseless control and dominance. On December 31st, 2013, Brielle Saunders arrived at Garden Drive, eager to unwind and showcase her rap skills. The atmosphere was electric, with the sound of rap music filling the air and the crowd cheering on the freestyle rappers. Everyone, including the trio of Johnson, Glover, and Garin, seemed to be having a great time. Brielle, never one to back down from a challenge, was in her element, and her talent was on full display as she effortlessly delivered complex lyrics and rhymes. As the night wore on, a rap battle was proposed, and Brielle, confident in her abilities, accepted the challenge. She faced off against the trio and others, and her exceptional skill and lyrical prowess left them all in awe. The crowd was divided, with some feeling frustrated and others admiring her undeniable talent. Despite the mixed emotions, the gathering remained lively, with other freestyle rappers taking the stage to showcase their skills, including the trio, who received appreciation for their efforts. As the night drew to a close, the crowd began to disperse, and the trio approached Brielle's car, seemingly intent on continuing the fun. They proposed a head-to-head rap battle, and Brielle, never one to shy away from a challenge, accepted. The trio, who occasionally engaged in rap, thought they could take her on, but Brielle's exceptional talent and skill left them struggling to keep up. She dominated the battle, and the gap between her and the trio was substantial, leaving them visibly frustrated. Despite their frustration, the trio did manage to deliver some impressive bars, and for a moment it seemed like they were enjoying themselves. However, their anger and frustration eventually got the better of them, and the night took a turn for the worse. In an instant, the trio's demeanor shifted from playful rappers to menacing individuals seeking relevance and dominance. They perceived Brielle as a threat to their inflated ego, and their frustration boiled over into a desire for retaliation. However, instead of responding with improved rap skills, they resorted to violence. Johnson pulled out a gun and pointed it at Brielle, who was oblivious to the sudden change in atmosphere. Glover followed suit, drawing his own gun and ordering Brielle to get into the car and drive. Brielle's fear was palpable as she complied with their demands, her hands shaking as she grasped the steering wheel. She had no idea where they were taking her or what their intentions were, and the uncertainty only added to her terror. Her eyes darted towards the trio, searching for any sign of explanation or reassurance, but their faces remained stoic and unyielding. The air was thick with tension, and the silence was oppressive, punctuated only by the sound of Brielle's ragged breathing. Her mind racing, she tried to process the events unfolding before her, but the trio's actions seemed senseless and unpredictable. As she drove, her hands remained frozen on the steering wheel, her body rigid with fear, and her heart pounding in her chest. The trio's menacing presence loomed over her, casting a dark and foreboding shadow over the entire scene. As the car continued on its journey, Glover's impatience grew, and he instructed Brielle to pull over. With guns still trained on her, she hesitantly moved from the driver's seat to the passenger seat, her eyes fixed on the menacing figures beside her. Glover took control of the wheel, his driving becoming more aggressive as he sped towards their unknown destination. Garin, who had been quiet until now, seemed to know where they were headed, his silence punctuated only by the occasional murmur. The car finally came to a stop in a desolate, abandoned lot on Far Road. The area was eerily quiet, devoid of any signs of life, with only overgrown weeds and debris scattered about. The silence was oppressive, with the only sounds being the muted murmurs of the men who held Brielle captive. The chill of the night air was palpable, but it was nothing compared to the fear that gripped Brielle's heart. As she sat in the car, Brielle's mind was consumed by thoughts of what might happen to her. The uncertainty was suffocating, and the silence only added to her terror. She was trapped with no escape from the clutches of these menacing individuals. The darkness outside seemed to closing in around her, and she couldn't shake the feeling that she was running out of time. The men's guns still pointed at her, a constant reminder of the danger she was in, and Brielle's fear threatened to overwhelm her. She stood trembling, her heart pounding in her chest as she faced the men before her. Their faces were twisted with malice, their eyes gleaming with a mix of hatred and cruel satisfaction. The air was thick with tension, every second stretching into an eternity. Her voice quivered as she pleaded, her words pouring out in desperation. "Please, let me go. I didn't mean to offend you, I swear. Please, I'm begging you." Tears streamed down her cheeks, glistening trails of anguish etched onto her face. She clutched at the faint hope that her humanity might reach them, that her suffering might evoke even a flicker of empathy. But her cries fell on deaf ears. They watched her crumble, their laughter harsh and devoid of compassion, each mocking jeer cutting deeper than any blade could. "You think you can get away after humiliating us like that?" one of them sneered, his voice dripping with venom. "You think you're better than us just because you won? Not tonight." Her victory had wounded their pride, their fragile egos bruised by her defiance. She had bested them, and now they sought retribution, not just to reclaim their dominance, but to utterly destroy her spirit. To them, she was no longer a person, no longer a being with feelings and fears. She had become a thing, a vessel upon which they could vent their frustration and exact their twisted sense of justice. One of them stepped forward, the metallic click of a caulking gun echoing ominously in the stillness. The cold barrel was pointed at her, its promise of violence undeniable. Her breath hitched as the leader barked, "Strip, now!" Her arms wrapped instinctively around her trembling body, as if she could shield herself from their leering eyes. The thought of obeying their command sent waves of humiliation coursing through her, but disobedience felt like a death sentence. She was trapped, her dignity and sense of self-worth hanging in the balance, teetering on the edge of oblivion. The men grinned wickedly, feeding off her torment like vultures circling a wounded animal. They took pleasure in her despair, savoring the power they held over her. It was a game to them, a sick, twisted game where her suffering was the prize. Her mind raced, desperately searching for a way out, a way to preserve the last shred of her humanity. But the world around her seemed to close in, the oppressive weight of her circumstances threatening to crush her entirely. She was alone, outnumbered, and at the mercy of men who had none. The assault was relentless, a nightmare that stripped her of every ounce of strength and dignity she had left. They violated her repeatedly, treating her like an object to be passed around. Her cries for mercy met only with cruel laughter and indifference. The physical pain was overwhelming, but it paled in comparison to the emotional torment. Every act of abuse carved deeper wounds into her soul, leaving her feeling hollow and broken. When they were finally done, they dragged her limp, battered body toward the trunk of her car. She could barely stand, her vision blurred by tears and the sharp sting of blood dripping from her wounds. But even in the depths of her despair, she clung to a tiny spark of determination, a desperate will to survive. As they fumbled with the car, she noticed their momentary distraction, a fleeting chance to escape. Summoning every ounce of strength left in her battered frame, she made a break for it. Her feet hit the ground with a jolt, and she sprinted into the darkness, the damp grass brushing against her legs. Her heart pounded like a drum, her breath ragged and uneven as she pushed herself beyond her limits. She didn't dare look back. The sound of their shouts and the metallic click of a gun cocking urged her forward. But the men were not about to let her escape. A barrage of gunfire erupted behind her, each shot slicing through the night like a whip. 10 bullets tore through her body, the searing pain knocking the air from her lungs. She stumbled, collapsing onto the cold, unforgiving earth with a heavy thud. The world around her blurred, her vision dimming as blood pooled beneath her. She felt herself slipping away, but her spirit clung to life with ferocious determination. The men approached her lifeless body, their faces devoid of remorse. One of them grabbed a gas can from her car, its pungent smell filling the air as they doused her with fuel. Without hesitation, they struck a match and set her alight, the flames consuming her broken form. They watched for a moment, the firelight casting grotesque shadows on their faces, before fleeing the scene, leaving her to burn in the cold night. But she wasn't ready to die. Through sheer force of will, she crawled, her body screaming in agony with every movement. The fire had scorched her skin, but her resolve burned brighter. She inched her way toward the faint lights of civilization, her spirit refusing to give in. Finally, she reached a road where horrified bystanders gathered around her, their faces pale with shock. Someone called for an ambulance, their frantic voice echoing in her fading consciousness. She was rushed to the hospital, her survival hanging by a thread. Her body bore the evidence of unspeakable cruelty, but the faint, stubborn rhythm of her heart persisted. She slipped into a coma, her battered body finally finding a fragile peace as the medical team worked tirelessly to save her. Meanwhile, the case had already drawn the attention of local law enforcement. Detective Luton Lance Deaton, a seasoned investigator with a reputation for solving the most challenging cases, was assigned to lead the investigation. Lance was known for his relentless pursuit of justice, and this case ignited a fire within him. The brutality of the crime demanded answers, and he vowed to find those responsible. As the detectives combed through the evidence, the horrifying details of her ordeal began to surface. Witnesses came forward, and forensic teams examined every inch of the crime scene. The town was shaken to its core, and Lance made it clear that no stone would be left unturned in the quest to bring her attackers to justice. While she lay unconscious in the hospital, the wheels of justice was steered in her direction and was set in motion. What the men didn't know, what they didn't anticipate, was that the woman they just tried to annihilate was not a victim. She was a survivor, and her story would be used against them in the courtroom. She was not just resilient, but her unyielding spirit would not be silenced just like that. Detective Lance and his team worked relentlessly, piecing together the evidence from a grim scene. With the assistance of forensic specialists, they scrutinized every detail of the abandoned lot, now confirmed to be the crime scene. Burnt grass, a torn piece of fabric, and DNA traces provided irrefutable proof. Medical examinations corroborated Brielle's harrowing testimony. She had been brutally raped and assaulted. As the investigation progressed, witnesses began stepping forward, recounting the events of New Year's Eve with chilling clarity. Despite her physical and emotional pain, Brielle demonstrated remarkable courage. From her hospital bed, she identified her attackers: Robert Johnson, Katuri Glover, and Joey Garin. The suspects were promptly apprehended and interrogated. During questioning, each tried to twist the narrative, insisting the encounter had been consensual. Johnson was cold and defiant, refusing to waver from his claims. Glover remained emotionless, a mask of indifference on his face. However, Joey Garin, the youngest of the trio, cracked under pressure, his fear betraying him. He faltered, nearly confessing and implicating the others. The evidence, however, spoke louder than their lies. DNA analysis and the medical findings painted an undeniable picture of their guilt. Armed with this overwhelming proof, the police arrested the trio, sparking outrage across the community. The town rallied behind Brielle, offering her their unwavering support and demanding justice for the heinous crime. In the courtroom, Brielle's strength shone through as she recounted the nightmare in heart-wrenching detail. Her tears did not diminish her resolve. The trial was intense, the defense desperate, but the truth prevailed. The jury found the three men guilty of aggravated assault, rape, sodomy, kidnapping, and attempted murder. The sentences were severe, reflecting the gravity of their crimes. Johnson and Glover received 6 consecutive life sentences, plus an additional 95 years, while Garin was sentenced to 5 life terms and 70 years. The courtroom erupted in applause as justice was served. Detective Lance, reflecting on the case, acknowledged the brutality of the crime and the resilience of his team. Most of all, he admired Brielle's unyielding courage, a beacon of hope and strength in the face of unimaginable darkness. Brielle's story teaches us the power of resilience, truth, and collective action in the face of injustice. It highlights that even in moments of unimaginable darkness, courage and determination can lead to justice. Brielle's bravery reminds us that speaking out, no matter how painful, is a crucial step toward healing and holding perpetrators accountable. Another drill to take home is the importance of community support and the tireless efforts of law enforcement and forensic teams in seeking the truth. Ultimately, it conveys a powerful lesson. Evil may exist, but the strength of unity, truth, and justice will always prevail. Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts below. We value your voice and encourage meaningful conversations about these dark yet real topics. And if you haven't already, subscribe to our channel to keep up with more chilling true crime stories. Be sure to hit the notification bell so you never miss an unsettling twist or an untold tale.